Hello everyone at Eswatini. My name is Chen and I am the CEO and Chief Scientist at Spark Amplify, where we provide AI-powered PR. Today's session, I will be sharing with you guys the key to B2B digital marketing during the new normal. And in fact, the goal is to help share with you guys how to successfully connect with your best storytellers in media as well as global buyers. So let's begin. Today's agenda will be two sections. One, it will be focused on how to build awareness with PR marketing. And second, we'll be focused on social selling in terms of how to utilize this methodology to find your best global customers and partners. And these two will be essential in the new normal in the sense of how do we successfully execute B2B digital marketing. So before we begin, let me do a little introduction of who I am. My name is Chen, last name is Lee, so you can call me Chen. And currently, like I said, I'm the current founder and chief scientist at Spark Amplify, a company that I started about 5 years ago. And in fact, even though I was born in Taiwan, however, I was educated in the United States at some of the finest institutions, including Berkeley, as well as Peter Drucker School of Management. And in terms of my professional experience, I have experience not only in the States, but also here in Asia, in some of the biggest companies around the world. And some of my emphasis in terms of experience include PR, include B2B marketing, as well as social media marketing. And some of those success cases includes some of the biggest companies around the world, including the US Fortune 500. So what you'll be listening or what you will be learning today will be some of the newest technologies as well as methodologies in B2B digital marketing. And these information I have actually, through these past couple of years, shared across the world with many individuals in not only in the States, such as San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York, as well as here in Asia, in Singapore, as well as even in Europe and UK. So the information that you will be receiving today will be the latest digital marketing methodologies. So hopefully you'll be able to learn from this section as well as apply it in your own setting. Okay, so before we begin, let me introduce where I'm from, here in Taiwan. So I'm currently actually here in Taiwan doing this video recording with you guys. And here in Taiwan, our capital city is Taipei. And the currency that we use is the Taiwan New Dollar. And just to give you an understanding of my home country, Taiwan, our total population is about 23 million. And we are a very internet connected country in a sense of over 28 million people are connected, either on mobile phones or even on some of these computers that we currently have on desktops. And in fact, in terms of the penetration rate for internet users are over 86%. So as you can see, Taiwan is a very connected country from an internet perspective. Now let's look at Eswatini. Before this session, I was trying to understand a little bit about your country and in terms of your diversity and economy. And as you can see, your economy is very, very diverse in terms of exports, whether it be in apparel, in terms of clothing, in terms of even some of these products such as fuses and things of that nature. Now, from a B2B marketing perspective, we really look at some of these finished products, which is a key essential of Eswatini's economy. And as you can see, apparel makes up about close to 10%. Okay, and then others items such as, like I mentioned, fuses, trucks, vans, and things of that nature, also 5 to 10%. So these are some of the products that hopefully through our session today, you will have a better understanding of how to market them through specialized B2B digital marketing methodologies. And furthermore, when we look at a specific important driver of your economy, which is apparel manufacturing, worldwide, based on Statista, from 2013 to 2026, it's estimated in 2026, there's going to be close to $2 trillion in terms of the market size. So it's huge from a global perspective. And furthermore, from Iswani's perspective, it's a major contributor to your economy. And furthermore, a lot of that revenue driving will be through trade shows. Okay, trade shows are an important part of B2B marketing. Okay, and of course, if we look at from a trade show perspective in terms of how much it's contributing to the worldwide, it's estimated in 2023, the actual world size revenue is about 40 billion. Okay, so as you can see, a good portion of that apparel revenue is actually driven through trade show marketing. But unfortunately, trade show marketing is being affected because of the pandemic. As you can see, due to the pandemic, a lot of the face-to-face, what we are used to in terms of engaging potential partners, customers face-to-face, temporarily no longer exist because of the fear of transmission of COVID-19 and things of that nature. Now, because of that, we have to really think about what are the future alternatives to these physical events, which plays such a critical, important role in B2B marketing. And so that's why we have this session today, because today what you will be learning from B2B marketing, not only just the traditional B2B marketing, but really the digital aspect of it. And so hopefully, whether it be post-pandemic, in the new normal, or even 4 or 5 years, or even 5, 10 years down the road where we all forgot about this COVID-19, digital marketing will remain to stay here, to continue on forward. And you guys will definitely be able to learn some of the methodologies as being shared today. And because of a lot of these events are now moving onto virtual events, you see that a lot of the physical events that was being executed around the world in a lot of these big cities to introduce new products to buyers and sourcers, a lot of that activity is now being introduced virtually online. Okay, so that is the future trend, and furthermore, I think it's definitely here to stay. Now, with the virtual trend, however, it is not as simple as we think. It's not just, for example, it's not just transporting the information that was provided offline to an online format. In fact, some of these biggest events in the world, have actually, these past 1 or 2 years have actually seen that when they try to move their event completely online, there seems to be a major a decrease in terms of attendance. So virtual does not guarantee offline success, right? And furthermore, I think with the pandemic nowadays, I think the process of offline events are going to be more complicated, right? It's not like before where we can just, take the next flight, carry our luggage, fly to the destination that we are interested in developing our business, attend a trade show, and start our business in that market. It's not that simple anymore. So the good old days are gone, and in fact, what we used to think of, that B2B business on the go will definitely be affected after this pandemic, and especially during this new normal. So hopefully, like I said, in this session today, we'll be sharing with you guys what are some of the methodologies, and also really focus in on the 2 main targeted individuals that we are trying to help you identify and connect with. And one will obviously be the media, and the second is how to find your customers. So these 2 stakeholders are essentially the key to B2B marketing. And that's what you will be learning today in terms of how to identify your best storyteller through media, as well as your best loyal customers through these different buyers. And just to give an example, just a quick overview before we really jump in and start really talking about the details. In terms of the PR marketing, we're going to be introducing an intelligent media outreach platform. It's allowing you to connect with some of these global media folks that are interested in your product, and furthermore, be able to, through their influencing power, to really be able to share about your brand story, as well as through their lens, through their perspective, really share, your product, the benefits, the advantages to their readers, as well as to that specific target audience. And in fact, in terms of success story-wise, there's currently over 2,500 brands are currently using this process from over 25 countries. So you guys will also definitely be learning about this as well. Secondly, is really about social selling. Social selling, we're looking at utilizing social media. Some of these social media that you guys probably heard of are probably like Facebook, Instagram. But what we'll be learning today are really social media using it for business. And one of the key and also the biggest professional social media network is LinkedIn. And with LinkedIn, with its over 700 million users at 200 countries, it is definitely a social media platform that you must know to be able to find your best customers as well as partners around the world. And in fact, we'll take this opportunity to share some of the success stories that we have applied here in Taiwan as well as globally. How to use LinkedIn, right, to be able to find your best customers across, currently right now we have success stories across over 15 industries. And so these are some of the industries that potentially applies to you. Okay, so essentially that was a quick 10, 12 minutes going over the overall agenda of today's session, as well as why media and why buyers and customers are important to your business. And in fact, at Eswatini, as I mentioned before, in terms of your the contribution of apparel manufacturing, it is important that to be able to identify alternatives to the traditional B2B trade show marketing through digital. And that's what we will be exploring today. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into our first topic, media. So with media, we're going to be looking at PR marketing. And PR stands for public relations. So essentially, it is your engagement with the different journalists, the different, let's say, media influencers. These are the individuals that you'll be engaging in telling your brand stories and telling them why your product and why your specific, the product, the technology is the key. So before we begin, we'll be looking at the question of the art of asking. So when we engage with media, it's all really about how do you convince them to not only be interested in your story, but really understand and hopefully be able to, through their lens, tell the story of your brand accurately as well as persuasively. Okay, and before we begin, I think I really wanted to stress the importance of media, because we really have to understand the importance of media first before we think about what's that next step, right? So we got to really think about how can they help us from a product perspective, and then so that we would like to invest in the time in terms of engaging them. So how can they help? Really three components. One is looking at the content, right? Through their lens, through their language, they're able to provide you with a new set of perspectives, as well as describing the advantage of your product through their language as well as their perspective. Secondly is the audience, right? Each media essentially is an influencer. They have their readers, they have the people that they are trying to essentially share the information with. And so a lot of these folks are potential people that are going to be fans of your product. And lastly, it's really about building social proof. Nowadays, I think it's really about not what you say why your product is so good. It's really about what other people says, how good your product is. And so as media, I think it's important, right? If you're able to get the right media to be able to help you build that social proof, that credibility skyrockets. So let's take a look at these three different segments, how media can help. From a content perspective, let's think about this. If you were to create a new product, wouldn't you like through the lens of media. Have them share what they think your product is all about and why it's so good, right? Through their lens, they would be able to introduce your product and also give different insights, potentially things that you have never known before. So for example, in this example, one of our customers, they created a product that very retro style arcade video game machine. And they were able to identify a very, very popular gadget media, which is called Gizmodo, that on a daily basis has over 2 million unique visitors. And these readers and visitors are potentially important individuals or potential customers of this product. And so through this journalist of writing this piece of article, he was able to share from his perspective the advantages as well as the key to this product through his language. So not only is the journalist helping you to localize your content, but furthermore, through the placement of this article, it is actually sharing this information with his readers. So in this situation, again, the person that wrote that previous article, Andrew, has over 15,000 readers on a daily basis reading his articles. So in this situation, by having Andrew write an article about your product essentially is something where he's credibly sharing that information directly to that audience, which potentially indirectly could become the customers of your product or potentially partners of your company. And then furthermore, by having shared that information, these individuals also take the opportunity to share comments, which gives you feedback in terms of product improvement. So in this situation alone, example once again, that article that was written by Andrew not only was able to share with 15,000 individuals of his readers, but furthermore of those individuals, after reading that article, was willing to be able to share product information, how to improve the product, how to, in terms of product specifications, what are some of the things that they would like to see in future product development. All that information is very important, especially when we are, as product manufacturers, we need to have that type of information to be able to move forward and in terms of future product development, how to improve current product, and then ultimately to be able to more successfully engage with our customers. And lastly, it's really about that brand social proof. By having media folks, journalists to write about you, it is what in the digital age, really that social proof that all the brands are looking for, right? By having these different media folks to be able to write articles about specific products and brands, these are all social proof that's necessary for more people to really believe in what you are offering. And hopefully, through today's session, not only do you guys understand the importance of this, but also at the same time, learn how to actually do it yourself. Okay, so now that I've sort of convinced you why media plays an important role in terms of brand awareness, let's look at how we can actually get them convinced on writing our story, right? Because media folks, they're busy people. They are always on the go, first of all. They're always being chased by deadlines. And lastly, on a daily or even weekly basis, their responsibility is to write articles. But more importantly, these articles are supposed to be interesting to his or her reader, right? So you, as a product manufacturer or a product exporter or a product developer, your goal is to how do you create your story so that you can convince that media individual to say yes. How can you convince them and say, yes, I want to write about your product and I want to be able to share your product to our readers so that they can learn more about what you offer and why your product is the best. So this is what I like to call in this segment, the art of asking. And in terms of the art of asking, it is really applying what I like to say, the golden triangle. The golden triangle consists of three aspects. One is the content itself. when you are trying to pitch to these media, it is important that you have the necessary content, you have the necessary video, the necessary graphics to be able to support, that article coverage, first of all. Secondly, what's the media angle? How are you able to position your story so that they would be interested in their upcoming article to write about you? What is that media worthiness or that angle, which is so important? And lastly, once you have the content and the angle, it's really about who you can target. Who are some of the best storytellers that you should identify, right? Because there's so many media journalists out there. There's no way that you can target all of them. And in fact, in the previous example that we just said, in apparel, let's say, for example, which is a critical export component of Eswatini, we really need to look into who are some of the apparel, let's say, media folks that we can target and let them know how Eswatini is potentially manufacturing apparel differently, maybe potentially more sustainable, maybe potentially we're utilizing new methodologies, right? These are all some of the informations that potentially would get this journalist that potentially are also reporting at some sort of media out in Africa or maybe out in Europe are interested in picking up that story. So it is really important on how to identify the right individual for you to approach and to pitch. So let's break it down, right? The golden triangle consists of 3 components. So let's look at first the angle. How can we get them interested in our story? And usually that involves storytelling. From a brand perspective, it is really the press release. So when we're looking at the press release, this is really the content piece, the information about what you are trying to say, right? So usually the press release involves the headline, which is eye-catching piece, title, that needs to be attractive enough so that the journalists are willing to continue on reading about your story, right? So when we're writing this press release, we really need to think about the headline. We really also need to think about our lead paragraph, right? The lead paragraph is essentially that first paragraph that's supposed to get them excited. Because ultimately, if the first paragraph is boring, they're probably not going to continue on reading, right? Because they're busy individuals, like I said. So it is really important in terms of your headline, in terms of your lead, and even at the end of the press release, how can they contact you if they need more information? Because ultimately, all the information that you provide on a press release are most likely not enough for an article. There's still probably going to be more information that's needed to complete that article, and so there needs to be that boilerplate where you provide the additional contact information for media to be able to engage with you. So what are some of the key components of press release? You got to make your headline irresistible, bar none. It is that important, because if the headline is not it is not attractive, then everything else, potentially, the media journalists are not going to spend time reading. Secondly, in terms of the information that you are providing, it needs to be newsworthy. It needs to have news value in a sense of, when I say news, it doesn't mean that, something about politics or something about, the financial. It's really about, in terms of what you are working on, news meaning information that potentially currently is not well known, and there's some specific information that is worthy of being shared. That is newsworthy. Third, offer tempting quotes, right? Because when we're looking at press releases, it is a very standard piece of content. And to be honest, it's not very human content in the sense of it is just writing about your product and so forth. So when we inject quotes, it makes it more human, makes it more warm in a sense of telling a story from a person perspective. And then of course, offer valuable background, because journalists are busy people. Sometimes they don't know everything. They are required to have some background information to understand what you are trying to do. So it is important to be able to offer that information as well. And lastly, like I said, let them know who can they contact, what can they do to get more information in the boilerplate. The second piece of information, which is important in the overall golden triangle, is really the brand press kit. When we're looking at the content, so like I said, in terms of an article placement, it goes, okay, a lot of the information is required, right? And furthermore, a lot of that information needs to be introduced by the brand owner themselves, such as you. So in the past, usually what happens is we create brand press kits with information such as Word documents, YouTube videos, JPEG pictures, logos, and things of that nature, right? So all that information, what happens, goes into a folder, potentially is on cloud, and then so this is the information that we share with the media, right? So when they're writing their story based on your press release, they need the additional different media files, such as graphics, such as video, to sort of support that overall article. That is the press kit. And what is usually included, like I said, sometimes it should be about potentially the founder or, the leadership of that company. It also includes important photos about the product or the process, the company history, even, past press releases, awards that you have won, even, for example, past media coverages that have actually occurred around your product, around your story. So all this information is really important in a sense of when a media journalist is interested in picking up your story, they need these additional information to help supplement the information that they will be providing in their piece of article. Lastly is finding the right person, right? So once we have the media angle, we have the press release, once we have the necessary content through the press profiles, now we need to be able to find the right person to be able to pitch the story to. And honestly, this sometimes can be a big headache because there's so many media journalists out there that, as someone that potentially has no past prior PR experience, it could be very daunting. Now, however, I just want to let you guys know it is definitely doable, okay? Especially with the technology today, with Google as our best friend, it is possible. And when we are doing this research, it is really important about learning about who we are trying to engage in terms of what are some of the things or their beats, what are some of the stories that they write about, right? And does their story relate to what we are trying to do, right? So knowing their beat is one thing. Studying their audience, right? Who are they serving in the sense of the article that they write? Who are they trying to appeal to in terms of readers? And then, of course, also look for reporters that are currently covering potentially your competitors or other companies that are doing similar things like you. So, for example, I'm pretty sure as apparel exports, there's other countries that are doing potentially similar stuff, right? So in this situation, we can learn about, hey, who are some of the other media folks that have reported about stories, let's say in other countries, right? That are doing similar things in terms of apparel exports. And furthermore, we can see how potentially these are media journalists that we can also approach as well and pitch our story to. And they may actually be interested in how at Eswatini we are doing things differently. And ultimately, it's really about the more you know about them, the better your chances is, right? So for example, at the end of the day, it's really about the human-human relationship, right? The more you know about them, what they are interested in writing, who are they trying to serve, then it gives you a better sense of who are the people that you should engage, specifically for your story. Okay, so we just went through the golden triangle, right? The art of asking. Now, we've gone through that process of why it's important, right? The angle, the content, as well as the target. That, in its nutshell, can be done manually. However, it is very time consuming. Or you can actually apply that to, let's say, finding a PR agency to do something like that. Now, there's definitely a lot of solutions currently out there in the market that is trying to facilitate that process. Now today I'm just gonna spend just a couple, 10 minutes to share with you guys, for example, how Spark Amplify is doing this, utilizing AR as well as automation. And then this is definitely something that you guys also can learn and potentially apply in your specific situation. So with PR campaigns, sometimes it is just not always as successful as we expect, right? And furthermore, sometimes because due to the budget, due to the time constraint, as well as the limited lack of experience, sometimes the results potentially doesn't meet our expectation. Now, so at Spark Amplify, we created this world's first end-to-end PR SaaS platform. And essentially it's democratizing PR, allowing the big brands as well as the small brands to all be able to utilize PR marketing to really be able to tell their story and let more people know through the process of PR marketing. And so furthermore, we try to make it more achievable with less manual work, as well as making it more affordable through a completely different, in fact, it's a subscription-based model. And so in terms of the media coverage, it is essentially trying to cover, making that match between who are some of the media folks that could be applied to specific brands or specific companies. And in fact, that research process that I just mentioned earlier, it is, to be honest, it is actually being done automatically for you. So you don't actually need to spend that time in terms of searching on Google search engines and things of that nature. And ultimately, it gets back to that golden triangle, which is really looking at how we can prepare the content so that we can build an impression with the media folks that we are interested in targeting, as well as how to create that story that is so important through the press release format, which through Spark Amplify, it also provides that assistance. And lastly, once we have the content as well as the story angle, it is really about how to find the right media folks to be able to pitch that story and provide all that information so ultimately they are willing to write about your story. So the AI press release assistant, this is one example, right? So when we're writing these press releases, I think I just mentioned to you guys, right? The key to writing press releases is the headline, is the lead paragraph, and is, the boilerplate and things of that nature. And so honestly, first time writing this, sometimes it can be very scary because you don't have the necessary experience, right? So what happened is with Spark Amplify's AI press release assistant, it really guides you through that process. So a tool like this can really help you, whether you have, whether it's that you have 10 years of PR experience or if you have no PR experience, it doesn't matter anymore. It's really getting back to the story itself, not whether you have experience or not, but it's really getting back to the story that you are trying to present to the media folks. And let's take a look at case studies, right? So for example, this company here, Maven, is an electronic company that makes or manufactures these earphones or earbuds, right? And at one of those trade shows, which I mentioned before, is a critical component of B2B marketing, which is the trade show that they were at was at CES, which is one of the largest consumer electronic shows in the world. They have no one that has experience in PR, have never done it before, but however, through this process, they were able to create a brand profile, allow media folks to, to really stay on that media profile, to really look at what they are trying to introduce in terms of an average time span of close to 5 minutes, plus, the story itself, never written a press release itself. Going through this process, they're able to create a press release that really garners enough impression, in fact, over 9 million impressions. And lastly, the media folks that they previously don't know or who don't know who to target, through this process, they were able to identify who are some of the key targeted media candidates that they can approach and furthermore get placements of. And we're able to get over monthly unique traffic of over 170 million. This is actually not that shabby for a company that has no PR marketing professionals, no marketing professionals with relevant experience, but was able to, at one of the biggest trade shows, the largest global stage in the world, to be able to present this type of showcase using a tool to help facilitate ultimately their story to the world. And these successful references carries not only here in Asia, but also across the world, in the United States, in Europe, and so forth. So ultimately, those three critical steps are connected on a one-stop end-to-end platform and can help the users to be able to not only automate some of those processes and really allow you to focus in on what you should really be focusing on in terms of value, which is telling your story to the right people, and let a lot of that manual work really be automated through the platform itself. Okay, so we spent about 30 minutes of this past session learning about the importance of media. And so from the beginning, we really shared about how it is important for brands not to directly tell why you are so good or why your product is the best, but how through the power of media to indirectly share brand stories to media and journalists, and through their lens, through their perspective, to be able to really introduce your product to their target audience and their readers. And that sometimes ultimately is a better way of telling your brand story. And furthermore, from a receiving end, potentially it is more credible because not only is it that it's not directly from the brand telling to the end user, but more so through the channel of media and credible, let's say, media platforms. Now, media plays a very critical part in terms of brand awareness. However, brand awareness potentially is a long-term marketing technique. From a buyer perspective, it is important how we can find buyers right now. And in fact, how can we, through the process of social selling, utilizing social medias to be able to continue to engage with these potential buyers that ultimately will be our customers and hopefully place orders and then further buy our product down the road. So in this next segment, we're really going to learn about targeting the buyers and then furthermore utilizing social selling such as LinkedIn to be able to successfully do this. Okay? So let's take a look at some figures. Like I mentioned before, I think trade shows over the years have played a very significant role in B2B marketing because a lot of the transitions or the information is being passed from the brand owners themselves or the manufacturers to the buyers and the sourcers and the media through the platform of trade shows. But like I said, due to the pandemic and COVID-19, all that changed, right? Because we no longer have that face-to-face offline engagement. Now, in fact, that is actually in agreement with the trend itself. So when we're looking at B2B marketing, it is really important about identifying decision makers, right? People that can actually decide on who we want to buy from. Those are our intended customers. And if we, as let's say apparel manufacturers, we want to be able to find the people that can make that decision to decide on buying from us. Now, however, when we look at Google's research, it has shown, for example, in 2012, about 10 years ago, that percentage, the percentage of decision makers are at that age was only about 24, 25, 27%. Now, however, when we look at it today, it's almost at 50%. So what does that mean? It means that at this point in time, B2B decision makers are getting younger. And then furthermore, 18 to 34 years old is a range where people are spending a lot of time on social media. And in fact, when we look at social media use, this is just in the US example alone, 90% of the people use social media. And in fact, in the earlier studies that I just showed you, shared with you, my home country, Taiwan, over 86% of people use social media. So if we are also looking for B2B decision makers, and if they are currently getting younger and they're at the age where 18 to 34 are the demographics that is really spending a lot of time on social media, it is important that we are able to identify social media platforms to engage with these different decision makers that we would like to do business with. And so that really introduces the concept of social selling, which I like to call it, sales 2.0, right? So in the traditional model, which a lot of people, not just you, but everyone else around the world, even many companies here in Taiwan, are still practicing the old sales model. They're utilizing cold calls. They're utilizing cold calls to have an opportunity to do sales demos, and then furthermore, through these sales demos, they're able to qualify leads, and hopefully through that process, be able to identify paying customers. Now that is the traditional sales model. When we're looking at the new sales model, which I like to call it social selling, it's no longer acting as the information pusher in terms of utilizing a lead list and then pushing your product out there. It's really about utilizing social networks, right? Using the social networks platform, using the active users on that network. And instead of pushing your information out there, we're actually sharing our information through education. Sharing, your potential customers with educations in terms of case studies, in terms of why potentially this industry, trend analysis, things of that nature. And then furthermore, through the use of social network, we're able to continuously engage them and build that relationship that's important to move forward. So that is social selling. It's not really about the selling, but it's really the social component of building relationships through utilizing social networks to continue to nurture this relationship. So with that being said, today we're going to be sharing with you LinkedIn. Why LinkedIn potentially, currently it is for a fact, the biggest professional social network out there. And before we utilize that, not only to do business, but it's more important to do what? To utilize that same social network to build your own personal network. And hopefully through this next segment, we'll share with you why LinkedIn is important for you as a professional yourself, to utilize that network to start building the contacts that's necessary ultimately to help you to make your business successful. First off, I want to share with you guys, the concept of, the personal versus professional, right? So when I say this, it's really about the mindset. So when we're using Facebook, it's really about the personal network. When we're using IG, Instagram, it's really about the personal network, right? Because we're spending time on that platform. We are getting information about our friends on that platform. We're getting information about our personal interests and also potentially entertainment information. That is all in the personal network, and potentially sometimes it's very private. However, in the professional network, it's not really about spending time. It's really about investing time, because we're not just spending time to be leisurely entertained. In the professional network, we're really about investing in how can we make ourselves better from a professional perspective. So for example, on LinkedIn, you see that there's a lot of professionals on there learning about new skills, learning about new knowledge, learning about potential new career opportunities. Those are all what we call investment, time being spent. So for example, on LinkedIn, you see a lot of information about, different information about brands, and also some of these current affairs or even news. So all that information is more on the professional network. So we really need to be able to segment that first out. So today, our remaining session, we're really going to be looking at the professional network, not really looking in too much on the personal side. And so when we look at LinkedIn, yeah, let's look at some profile information, right? So currently right now they have over 700 million people on LinkedIn. And in fact, it is still a rising or an increasing usage in terms of active members. So currently right now there's over every 2 seconds there's 2 new members joining LinkedIn versus, let's say, other platforms where they might be declining. And lastly, so when we're looking at decision makers, we sometimes evaluate their salary as a determinant of if they actually have that decision-making power, right? So usually we say, hey, if the person's salary is high, then potentially he or she has a high position in that company, and therefore he or she can make that decision. And when we compare that to, let's say, Twitter and Facebook, you see that it is clear that LinkedIn has, the LinkedIn users on average, the salary is almost, if not more, twice as much as Twitter and Facebook. So from that perspective, you should be more convinced that if we are looking for decision makers, then potentially they are on LinkedIn. However, I'm pretty sure sometimes when we think of LinkedIn, the first thing that pops up in our head is, wait a second, isn't that just a job site? Isn't that where people are looking for jobs or looking for a new, let's say, position? Yes and no. Yes is that they actually started as a job site, where it's not really a job site, it's more of a social network for, let's say, professionals. So back then, the founder of the LinkedIn, which is Reid Hoffman, he actually, LinkedIn was very popular, let's say, in the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. Why? Because a lot of the engineers there were on this social network, and then furthermore, through this network, they were able to find potentially, a better position down the road, right? And so with that being said, a lot of the professionals started utilizing that to sort of not only build that network out, but also utilizing the network to search for their next job. So that is true. However, that is not the only reason why people get on LinkedIn. And in fact, that same type of data is just as valuable from a business perspective, because if we are trying to identify people that we can do business with, and if we can utilize that same LinkedIn data to find or segment the people that we want to potentially target, then ultimately it is just as good when we use it for B2B marketing. And that's what we'll be learning today. So why are LinkedIn connections so valuable? I think a lot of times, when we're looking at social media, we don't really look at it this way because, for example, Facebook, do you really consider why you spend so much time on that? Do you ask, something monetary in exchange for the time that you're spending on social media? No, right? Because those are personal time that you spend with your friends. However, when we look at LinkedIn, the connections that you build, essentially you can actually monetize that. Let me show you how. So this is just a quick analysis, but it should, I'm pretty sure you guys will get the point. So back then, a couple of years ago, LinkedIn was actually bought by Microsoft. And back then, Microsoft spent about $26.2 billion on purchasing LinkedIn. Now, that's a lot of money, right? That's USD, first of all. That's a lot of money. And back then, LinkedIn only had about 450 million users, okay? And to be honest, LinkedIn is really a platform of data of its users, right? So if you really want to, sort of value the price of each of those data, if we do some simple math, 26.2 billion divided by over 450 users, they pretty much spend close to $60 USD dollars on each of those user data when they bought that company. Now, likewise, if you start using LinkedIn, hopefully after the session, you'll get interested and start building that professional network. Imagine this, if you were able to get 100 connections on LinkedIn, and based on the price that Microsoft bought LinkedIn for a couple of years ago, And furthermore, when you do some math calculations, each of that contact that they purchased for was $60, close to $60. The 100 connections that you currently have on your LinkedIn, 100 times 60 or 58.2 is actually worth about $5,820. So essentially, because when you connect with these individuals, you have access to all that, all their contact information. It is safe being said, the connections that you build on LinkedIn and the data that you are actually able to see, it has a value to it. So hopefully, through today's discussion, we'll get you guys, excited, and furthermore, let you guys know that, the effort, the time that you spend on building those connections, it really has a monetary value to it. So let's get started in terms of how you guys can, build your personal network. 5 action items we're going to go over. 1, the profile, right? So when you get into LinkedIn, you'll notice that essentially everyone has a profile. And this profile, to be honest, it really looks like a resume, right? It has all the information of your education, your work experience, and even some of your skills and interests and so forth, right? And however, even though there's a lot of that information, but the really critical informations are, 1, how do you introduce yourself? What are the taglines, right? Because when people, hopefully when on LinkedIn, when they are meeting you for the first time, they don't really see all the entire profile. The only thing they see is really your picture as well as your introduction. So if you are planning to utilize LinkedIn to build your professional network, it is important to make sure that the information that they see are well presented and also to the format that potentially they are more acceptable to. So the tagline and introduction is a must. Secondly, who's it for, right? If you're using LinkedIn, just like we said before, if you're looking at, if you're using it to look for a job, so be it, right? The information that you want to put in there will be more on who you are as a potential job candidate. But if you are using this to develop business, to do, let's say, B2B marketing, which is the topic for today, then it's no longer important what you are good at anymore. It's really good, it's more about the service that you're providing that potentially can help your customer in terms of their pain points, in terms of their need. So we have to really define who is this profile for. So if we are doing it for business, B2B marketing, it is important to really stand on the position of the product and the service itself rather than the person or the candidate. And then of course, with anything, what's the social proof? How has your service or how has your product currently, let's say your apparel, how is it being currently being used and how is it successfully being expressed, right? All that is important so that when potential customers are engaging with you, they understand the credibility of it. So when we're looking at a profile, right? So this is what you usually see. If you don't know the person, the only thing you see is really a picture, a name, and the headline or the introduction. So all that information needs to be there, right? In order for, if you are using this to sort of develop that B2B relationship, it needs to be there so that at least this looks legitimate, and furthermore, the person on the other end, the potential customer, they're willing to engage with you and actually accept your request. Secondly, so once we have a profile, then it's really down to who are you trying to target, right? So like I said, LinkedIn's got 700 million users. It's got plenty of data. Now, with all that data, you as a user need to be very clear on who are you targeting, right? Because if you're not clear of that potential buyer persona that you're trying to target, most likely, LinkedIn won't be able to help you. So you have to understand, for example, what are their job titles? Where are they located? How big is their company? What industry are they in? And what are some of the groups that they're a part of? So those are some of the informations. Once you have identified, then you can go through the process of utilizing LinkedIn's data to be able to segment out and target the people that fulfill that data, and furthermore, you can engage with. So given that there's so much data, it is important to really make sure there is a filter process, right? So you can utilize, the Boolean search, VP marketing or SVP marketing, anything, right? As long as you know who you're trying to look for. So let's say if you're looking for vice president of marketing or senior vice president of marketing, and then you place this filter in the query box, you will get, for example, the vice president of that specific company, right? And so these are the people that potentially you are interested in engaging. So we have the profile, we know who we are trying to engage, and then the next step is we have to actually go out and start doing that outreach or make that connection. Now this process, honestly, it is just as important because you have to follow their process. LinkedIn's got their different policies. For example, when we are sending out an invitation, we have to limit that invitation or personalize that invitation message to only 300 letters or character max, right? So you cannot be rambling on and write everything about yourself. That is one thing. Secondly, if you would like to do this on a larger scale in terms of reaching out to more people, then you have to really consider about the non-paying, the free versus the paying plan, because by being on the paying plan, then you potentially have more access to the data and even the quota itself. And then ultimately, I think it's there's different features that you can utilize. For example, you can see who are the people that are looking at your profile that might be interested in you, so you can indirectly engage them. But this whole process really, it is to some extent, it's a virtual handshake, right? So you really need to think about not only the people that you're trying to engage, but you really need to have a process in place to be able to reach out to these individuals. And just some tips, like for example, LinkedIn, there is a very unique characteristics is that when you reach to 500 connections, then the additional connections that you get down the road, it doesn't really matter anymore because it only displays 500 plus, right? So your priority when you start this process at the very beginning is how can we quickly not only reach to 500 connections, but also at the same time connect with people that have big reach or higher reach or wider reach, so that when you want to use this as a B2B marketing, let's say, channel, then you are able to have a wider access to the potential buyer data that you would like to have access to. So if you're interested in how I go about this, here's a QR code of my LinkedIn profile. You can take a look at that, and also send a request over and add me as well, so we can hopefully be able to stay connected on virtually on LinkedIn if you have any questions down the road. And also you can take a look at how I utilize LinkedIn to craft the necessary profile content and so forth. But more importantly, when we are reaching out to these individuals, it is really important about that you're not just randomly reaching out, but you do some research. Sort of like what we were doing PR marketing as well, right? So when we're engaging media, didn't I recommend you guys, or didn't I suggest you guys to do some analysis first? Learn about who their audience is, what their interests are. That's important, right? Same thing when we are on LinkedIn and when we are trying to engage with potential partners and customers, we got to understand a couple of things, right? First of all, commonality. What are some of the things that we have in common? So for example, in my situation, I always like to look at their background in terms of what school they went to. So if they also went to, let's say, Berkeley, then that is something that we have in common. And then furthermore, we can use that as sort of a ice-breaking message where I say, hey, you're also from Berkeley and I am from Berkeley too. And so we can, let's say, begin that discussion, right? So what is that commonality? Whether it be school, whether it be past similar experiences. Anyway, that commonality needs to be there first. And if you don't have a commonality, let's learn about their interests. So if there's some specific interests, things that interest them, and that is something that it's worthwhile to mention, then potentially that might be a connection point. Also, references, make references, right? Maybe you guys, in the same time, you guys attended a similar event, and so therefore, even though you guys didn't meet face to face, but you guys attended something that was very similar, or maybe it was the same, then that's another connection. And lastly, compliments. People never reject compliments, right? When you are complimenting a specific individual, then instead of turning you down, they would be more willing to be more receptible to your message. So when we are looking at that outreach, it is really about learning the people or the potential individuals that you're targeting. Now, however, the whole process on LinkedIn, you have to follow by their rules, which is essentially through their messaging platform. That's the only way you can actually engage them directly. Now, of course, there's other indirect ways, such as maybe engaging them on their post, leaving comments, things of that nature. But ultimately, it is through the process of messaging. Now, what are some of the keys to successfully message these individuals? First, the message sequence itself, it has to be timely. You have to provide the message in a timely basis, in a sense of when they connect with you, you don't wait, let's say, a month later to reply back, but you try to, at the time of being connected, get that reply back as soon as possible. Secondly, provide valuable content, right? No one rejects valuable content. If a content is valuable from a perspective of making me better as a professional, or maybe something that I would need as, let's say, to help me to do better my job, that information is important, right? So think about when you are messaging these individuals or when you're connecting with them, how do you provide valuable information or valuable content that will be useful for the person that you are trying to engage? And then, of course, LinkedIn posting, right? When you are consistently posting on LinkedIn, it also shows that, hey, I have a lot of information that I would like to share, and then indirectly, they potentially would be linking up with you as well. Lastly, message, it is about engagement. So you have to be able to continually, through the process of messaging, to continually build that relationship and engage with your target audience or your target customer. So the messaging itself, what does it look like, right? So for example, when we are writing, because at the end of the day, you don't know the person doesn't know you, you guys have never seen each other, and so and then it is only through the process of the LinkedIn network itself you are engaging with, right? And so it is important about when you're writing this message, for example, on the top example, it is essentially just, I am a dynamic marketing professional with over 15 years of experience focused on finding the most efficient way of connecting business and customers, and I would like to connect with you. So do you guys notice something? It's all about I. It's all about what I can do, right? Now, when we turn that around, like I said, no one likes to be sold at. It's really about they like to be complimented, or they like to be able to potentially find that potential shared interest or that commonality. So a better message would be the bottom one. So when we look at the bottom one, it will be like, hey, hi, Aja. So we actually write the person's name rather than just say hi, right? So it looks, sounds more personal to some extent. Secondly, we say something like, hey, I really enjoy your work on HubSpot, sales blog, especially your recent piece on lead generation. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So do you notice the two differences? Yeah, the second one sounds, first of all, it sounds more personal. It sounds more like something that you would write to your friend, right? Rather than just a machine-created message that you send to everyone else, right? So it sounds more personal, and furthermore, you're talking more about them than yourself. So you're saying, hey, I really enjoy on what you do, right? So compliment, like I said, no one really rejects any compliments, right? Compliments are good. So always try to compliment, right? And then secondly, enjoy your recent piece on lead generation, meaning that you've actually have been learning about them. So you spend the effort of learning about them because you notice that they recently wrote a piece, a new recent content. So at the end of the day, sometimes, even though you guys don't know each other, but they'll be like, hey, maybe I should give this person a chance, right? Yeah, so that's sort of, I hope you guys get the idea, right? So that is the essence and also the key to utilize LinkedIn, through the process of messaging to really engage that build that relation. And lastly, any business, whether it be big or small, no business deals can be done on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is only a social media platform that allows you to continue that conversation, nurture that relationship, and ultimately the goal is not to continue to stay on LinkedIn, but it's really to take it off LinkedIn and follow up through the channels that you're familiar with or channels that you are familiar with in terms of business development, right? So it may be your email campaign. It may be arranging a phone appointment. It may be directing it to your website, or maybe even just a traditional, hey, let's grab a coffee and let's discuss a little bit more about what we can do or what we can collaborate on, right? And so this essentially is telling you that LinkedIn is a good platform for you to be able to build that relationship, to continue that relationship, but ultimately, the purpose of this session obviously is for B2B marketing and is to hopefully find your best customers. It needs to be able to go back to what you are familiar with and hopefully transition that relationship that was built on LinkedIn to something more physical in a sense of face-to-face and being able to close that deal at the end of the day. So the key to LinkedIn success, I like to call it the CNS process, right? Connect first. You have to be able to identify the people that you are trying to connect with, and then connect them first on LinkedIn, right? There's 700 million people. Most likely there will be someone out there that you would like to connect with. Once you are connected, secondly, let's nurture this relationship through the messaging process. Hey, let's write content. Let's write a piece of message and share content that has value. Let's continue that dialogue, at least to some extent on LinkedIn. And then furthermore, through the power of social media, because it is a social media, we are able to, hopefully, through the power of social media, to be able to share that information more broadly, not only just the person that you've identified and reached out to, but also potential other professional in that industry would be able to see the information that you are currently trying to present or the story that you're trying to tell. So, this segment on LinkedIn is really about some of the my own social selling experience, and just to, as a tidbit, I just want to share with you guys, on many occasions, especially prior to the pandemic itself, especially during these trade shows, I was able to utilize the same process, and in fact was able to achieve very good success in terms of new customer development, and furthermore, a lot of these business developments were not only just locally, but as well as globally around over 10 countries as well. So hopefully, through this process and the things that you guys learned today, you guys will be able to not only apply it in your situation, but achieve the same amount of success, if not more. Okay, so previous session, we talked about how we can utilize LinkedIn profile to build your own professional network, which I think if you were to follow the steps that I've actually listed out, the 5 key steps, you guys would definitely be able to be on the path of utilizing LinkedIn to build your professional network, not only successfully, but also sustainable wise in the long run. Now, that's from a personal perspective. However, when we are looking at it from a business perspective or a company perspective, we can also do the same thing, right? And furthermore, from a company perspective, we are able to utilize their ad campaigns to be able to target individuals not only not only on an individual basis, but even on a bigger scale from a campaign perspective. So let's look at how that can be achieved with LinkedIn ads. First off, if we are trying to do B2B marketing, we have to identify the people with the right set of mindset. The right audience is important, right? Like I just mentioned earlier before, if we are currently placing ads on Facebook, potentially the people that you are reaching out to, because when they're on Facebook, they're not really thinking about job-related stuff. They're really thinking about family and friends. They're really thinking about their personal leisure entertainment. They probably are not in the right mindset of receiving ads that are more B2B related, right? So they're not in tune of engaging with those type of ads. Now, however, when we are placing the same type of ads on LinkedIn, it's a different story. And why do I say that? Because the people that are on LinkedIn and when they see the ads, the mindset potentially, it aligns better with what they're currently thinking about right now, right? So potentially they're probably thinking about, hey, what are some of the potential manufacturers that I can engage with so I can hopefully get a better raise or maybe even achieve my KPI for this season or this quarter, right? And so in that situation, they're looking for B2B related information. And so at that point in time, when they actually receive that ad campaign being shown through their feed, they are potentially in a better mindset of receptively receiving that information. So that's important. And then furthermore, like I said, right? So this is an example. When we look at LinkedIn, you know, for example, 40% of people are looking for, you know, to learn from leaders and experts. 59% are looking for improving their careers or even searching for new opportunities. However, when you look at Facebook, it's completely different, right? There, 77% is really the key is about staying up to date with friends, okay? And then also 60% is being entertained. But in terms of learning, in terms of improving, that's not that important. It's only about 10 to 12%. So when you are at the same time presenting the same type of ad information in Facebook versus LinkedIn, the mindset is different, and then furthermore, the way your ad is going to be received is going to be different as well, and ultimately the engagement is going to be different. So it's really important that when we are from a B2B perspective, utilizing ad campaigns, it is really important that we select the right platform, the right social media to really be able to present the information to the right audience. And so let's look at some of the key advantages of utilizing LinkedIn to achieve this, right? We're going to be looking at 3 key advantages. And these 3 key advantages are essentially why LinkedIn is one of the most popular B2B social media platform out there. First, we're going to look at just the pure size, right? LinkedIn itself right now, like I said, is the largest professional network. And in fact, with over 700 million users at over 200 countries, most likely the person or anyone that you are currently looking for in terms of a potential customer, potential partner, they're probably on that platform. And in fact, and furthermore, if you're looking at United States, US, or Europe, if you combine the current active users in those 2 regions, added together is over half of all the active users combined in LinkedIn. So you have to really understand, first off, who are you trying to engage, right? If those are the main key areas or regions that you're trying to reach, then most likely LinkedIn is your best solution. Secondly, since we are looking at this as looking at LinkedIn not only from a HR perspective, but we're trying to use this as a B2B marketing perspective, trustworthy is important. And in fact, one of the a top news media in the United States did a study. And in fact, LinkedIn was indisputably the most trusted platform, ranked among other social media as well. So LinkedIn ranked 70% versus, let's say, Facebook 32, Twitter 30%. So what does that tell you? It tells you that if we are if we're looking for a social media to do business and to build that business relationship, we gotta find the platform that is the most trustworthy, and furthermore is the most trusted platform out there. And currently, based on this study, LinkedIn is the most trusted out there. Information source rank, right? So what does this mean, right? So when we are out there trying to engage with business decision makers, we really need to understand where are they receiving their information in terms of when they need to make decisions, right? And this was a study that was also done in the United States. They did a study saying, hey, where the decision makers go for reference information? LinkedIn ranked number one again. 55% of the professionals actually look for information or reference information in LinkedIn versus, let's say, Facebook only 16%, or even, let's say, CNET, other media journalists, which is 37%. So it is important to be able to understand where are your decision makers getting their information. And so once we have this source, then we can see how we can potentially, through that source, be able to disseminate your relevant brand information to the target audience that you're looking for. So what's the second advantage? The second advantage is really looking at the data itself, right? As in the previous section, I was sharing with you guys the profile makeup of LinkedIn. And you notice that the information on those profiles are usually consist of your education, your job, your skills, and even your interests, right? All those information is essentially what you usually see on your resume. And furthermore, that's the type of information you usually see on LinkedIn. So the type of information that you actually get or you see on LinkedIn is very, very different versus, let's say, some of the other social media platforms. And because of the structure of the data, it's so resume oriented, that allows us to do very, very interesting thing in terms of ad campaigns and in terms of target audience segmentations and things of that nature. Now let's look at a concept of decision making. B2B marketing is different than B2C marketing. B2C marketing is really about trying to get that one individual to open up his wallet to buy that one specific product. However, B2B marketing is really about sharing your information, getting your information through not only just one person, but it's a group of committee. It's a decision-making committee to determine whether you are a good manufacturer or supplier for them to continually to engage. And when we look at this decision-making committee, it's usually not just that one person, what you usually see in B2C situation. But B2B, it's really a committee, which LinkedIn did a study before. That committee is about 6.8 individuals. So that's the typical number of individuals that usually have a say whether they choose you over another vendor or a manufacturer. Now, with that being said, that's what makes B2B so complicated, and so that's why sometimes the B2B marketing sales cycle is so long, because you have to go through the process of not only convincing one person, but you got to convince the other 5.8 individuals as well. Now with LinkedIn, because of its unique data set, where we can actually identify their past experience, their education, we are then able to segment that persona, looking into how to identify, of the 6.8 people, how can we identify engineers? How can we identify purchaser roles? How can we identify executive roles? And then furthermore, based on their persona, based on their roles, be able to provide the information that they are more receptive to and more is looking for. So that allows us to achieve what? That allows us to target these persona and be able to personalize the entire content delivery process, and furthermore, achieve a more successful information transmission, and lastly, to be able to really affect and influence that buying committee of 6.8 people at a shorter amount of time through the ad campaign process. So what's the third advantage? The third advantage is looking at the information collected in the past versus the LinkedIn profile itself. So in the past, when we are, let's say, at trade show events, we usually collect information. And these type of information includes what? It includes business cards, it includes questionnaires that we ask potential, let's say, attendees or people that come visit our booth, right? So these are all the information that we usually collect when we attend trade shows. Now, with LinkedIn, it's no longer the physical, manual, handwritten information. It is no longer the business card that potentially no longer is valid anymore because people are potentially working from home or changing jobs because of the pandemic or anything like that. The information that you receive when you're on LinkedIn, it's really their most updated profile. So you understand not only their education experience, you also understand their work experience, and furthermore, it is being updated as we speak. So it is, to some extent, the most updated information for you to engage. So today, we spent quite an amount of time really diving in and exploring the importance of PR marketing as well as social selling. And ultimately, through these two techniques, we are trying to hopefully engage two stakeholders that are very critical to the success of our business. And like I mentioned before, with media, it is important that we, through the power of media, through their storytelling ability and capability, be able to tell our brand story the way they know how and the way that their audience in that specific market are receptive to. So ultimately, through PR marketing, we are not only able to localize our content, but also be able to build our brand awareness through media exposure. As for social selling, today we shared about how we utilize LinkedIn, which is one of currently the biggest professional social network, to utilize the LinkedIn not only to build your own personal professional network, which is just as important as a professional individual yourself, but also from a company perspective, how can we, from a company position, through the utilization of LinkedIn ad campaign, to scale that brand awareness process and target the individuals that we are interested in engaging. And furthermore, like we shared before, due to the nature of the data and the accessibility of the data, we are able to target the persona that we are interested in, but more importantly, achieve that personalized content delivery to help us ultimately shorten the sales cycle, and furthermore, be able to quickly or more quickly be able to have access and furthermore convince the ultimate B2B buying committee to make a decision in your favor and hopefully conduct business with you. So today, as a final note, I always like to provide some key takeaways. And so what are some of the key points that I hope all of you were able to take away from today's session. There's 6 key points. One, with COVID-19 around, as well as moving forward, we have to go back to our normal lives, and so it's important that we prepare for a new normal, whether it be similar to what it was before, or maybe might be completely something different. But we have to prepare for what is waiting for us, right? And from a B2B marketing perspective, things are changing as well. Like I said, business on the go, B2B business on the go is no longer an option. And so we really need to think about the digital aspect of achieving the same thing. How can we promote our brand? How can we, hopefully, through the digital process, be able to identify and connect with our best customers? That is the essence. And as for the 2 topics that we talked about, one obviously was PR marketing. And the key to that is, in the past, PR marketing has always been something where, the big brands were able to have access to. Now, the important part about today's session is I really want you guys to understand that PR marketing is not just for big brands with deep pockets. It is really ultimately back to the worthy of your story. If you have something worthy of being shared, then there are methods, there are tools that are out there that can help you put that story together, and hopefully through the power of PR marketing, share that information to the audience that potentially are interested in learning about your brand. And of course, with PR marketing, it really gets back to the media journalists themselves. They serve a lot of potential advantages and benefits to your brand, but ultimately they are your best storytellers. So let them do what they do best, and as for you, prepare the information that you need to get them be on your side and present the story that they best know how. As for the second session, where we talked about social selling, I also mentioned, right, social selling is business 2.0. It is essentially moving forward, not with what we were doing before of presenting information, cold calling, sales demos, but it's really about engaging in that relationship. It's really about education. It is really about, hopefully, that engagement. And by learning LinkedIn, it is a tool that potentially will help you build your personal network, but more importantly, allow this personal network to be your biggest asset, not only currently, but as well as moving forward. And lastly, through its campaign, through these processes, we have to, hopefully, in the new normal, learn how to work smarter, but of course, not just harder, right? So that's essentially the end of my session today. And I'm gonna leave you guys with some information about how to contact me. That's my email, and if you'd like to learn more about Spark and Amplify, or if you want to take a look at my LinkedIn, scan this QR code, and then we can get connected on LinkedIn as well. Thank you for your time, and hopefully this session will not only give you a better understanding of B2B marketing in the new normal, but hopefully provide you with the necessary tools and methodologies to be successful in the coming years. And thank you for having us.